who's really been known as one of the best investment bankers, one of the youngest achievers, and of course, needs no introduction, Manisha Girotra, of course, previously was head of UBS, now at Moelis. Manisha, good morning. Always good to have you on the show. We'll what's the deal momentum looking like right now? Because, we have seen over the last few days a lot of QIPs, a lot of IPOs. The biggest of them, in fact, has opened today. How's the deal momentum from here looking like?
So I think fairly strong deal momentum, both in the M&A market as well as the capital markets. I think what you saw in the last quarter was a bit of nervousness around the capital markets, especially because of what was happening on the demonetization front, etc. The market tended to overreact to that. I think a lot of those worries are behind us. Globally, growth's looking robust. World is feeling more positive about Trump and the US. So I think general upliftment in the markets. And India's reported GDP numbers, general activity around India, consumption sector doing very well. All of these things have really picked up momentum and brought a lot of interest back into India. So I think the rest of the year you should see a very positive momentum in both M&A and capital markets.
Manisha, it's a pleasure to have you with us. You were one of the first to break all glass ceilings that you could think of and emerge at the top in your chosen field, which is a very tough one, investment banking. So it's great to have you with us today. But yeah, we were speaking of deals. Anuj started it on the right note. Stressed assets, that's where there is plenty of pickings and yet the most problems. Do you think that you will be able to get foreign companies like, say, a Brookfields or the KKRs and the others interested in picking up stressed assets? We haven't seen them doing much so far.
Yeah, I think, look, there's a lot of interest. The issue with all foreign investors is that they need a clear framework. And, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the NCLT, it's early days. And once we're able to see some successes through that, you'll see investors come in because, as you said, Lata, the opportunity is huge in this sector. And some of the underlying assets are extremely high quality, but investors coming in will, A, need clarity, B, need haircuts. There may be a bit of a spread, and we'll have to come to terms with those new realities. So I think if India can offer that, which to me looks like there is no option. We need capital. I mean, whatever be the way of restructuring, whether it's SDR, S4A, ARCs, all of the structures that we're talking about, what we need is capital. So, these Brookfields, KKRs of the world, many others, Wilbur Rosses have deep pockets. So if you have to attract them, you have to give them clarity of framework and take the necessary haircuts. So if we are able to provide that, I think there'll be lots more capital coming in.
Okay, Manisha, hi, good morning. I'm going to talk about deals in a bit, but as we speak to you, we're seeing some of your street credits go on air as well. And one of them says that you were awarded the 50 most powerful women in business in 2014 by Forbes, including a whole host of others. So I just wanted to ask you, on the occasion of Women's Day, how easy is it in today's day and age for a woman to manage work, family, children? Basically, is it easy to have it all?
Is it easy to have it all? Probably not. Is it great to have it all? Probably yes. So it is very difficult. 25 years ago when I started, it was far more difficult because, it was just difficult to accept women in a serious banking role. But I think now all of the sectors that have opened up, especially your sector, which has brought in such successful women like yourself, Lata, etc., I think a lot of role models have been created and it's become easier for the women. Organizations are more aware on diversity issues, gender issues. So yes, definitely easier. Easier on the front of just women achieving in the corporate area, but at a personal level, it still remains very challenging. It's hard to manage and juggle all balls, but it's extremely gratifying. I wouldn't have it any other way.
We were speaking to a banker earlier. In fact, we were speaking to the banker from SBI, Anshula Kant, and she said that within that space, the PSU banking space, they've now opened up to a lot of progressive policies and work ethics for women to make it easier for women to come back into the workforce once they get married, once they have kids, etc. Investment banking is such a tough space. Has there been any progress there with respect to work ethics?
Yes, I think there's been quite a bit of progress. Things like virtual workplaces, working out of home was a complete no-no when I started. Things like creches, things like bringing your baby to work, having facilities for them. All of this was unheard of and unprecedented. It was, you had to be so much in the mold of a traditional male investment banker that women had to follow that path too. But today you can pretty much, be different and work that way. And investment banks are working to retain female talent. So things like, flexible hours, the first 6 months of maternity longevity, paternity leave, all of these things have come in. So investment banks too have made a significant amount of progress in trying to retain women at work.
Okay, Manisha, let's get back to business now. The space where we are seeing some M&A now is telecom. And then I ask you this because, in your previous stint, you had worked on one of the biggest ones, Vodafone's acquisition of Hutchison SR. What have you made of the, the news flow surrounding Vodafone Idea merger, Bharti acquiring companies? Do you think this space could go through a lot of consolidation?
So I think what's happening, without naming any specific deal, is that, the consolidation was very much needed. We had too many players, too fragmented, with too little capital available to them. So I think what was needed is, the market is too strong, deep. The larger players are very, very strong. So what you need is an equal competition amongst the larger players, and that's really where what's happening. You're seeing consolidation. Telenor, you mentioned, Commercial happened last year. So I think the consolidation is much needed, much welcome. It'll give us 3 or 4 robust players, and I think that's very good for the sector. If you remember, that's where we were 10 years ago when we started, and this was known as the golden sector of the economy, and all of us used to talk about telecom being, one of the most successful stories of India. So I think that's a really good outcome on the consolidation that's happening.
Okay. Well, I have so many questions. I don't know which to squeeze in the time available. Manisha...
I will only answer your questions, so whatever questions you have.
Thank you. Okay, private banks. Private banks and other private banks and NBFCs, private banks and MFIs. Do you see this space yielding some mergers in this year?
So look, I think the segment which needs the most consolidation in India, as you know, Lata, you track this sector, is more the state-owned banks, right? I mean, SBI and its subsidiaries, what's happening. We need a lot more consolidation in that space. We need a lot more, representation in financial services. Private banking, I mean, is there a merger likely to happen? I'm not convinced of the rationale there. The private sector banks are already very large, very well penetrated. You probably niche M&A in this sector makes more sense. So I'm not convinced that that's something that makes immediate logic.
Okay. Well, the other thing, of course, is stressed assets. Do you think it will happen in steel or in power? Where do you think the Brookfields and the KKR are more likely to come in? And any deal this year, you think?
So steel, power, infrastructure are all segments that these players operate in. They are keen to work on each one of these sectors. They're looking at opportunities in each of these sectors. A lot of it depends on what is it that the banks are offering, what is it that the promoter is willing to do. So I think a lot, it's not sector-wise. It's what is a good deal opportunity, what looks good, doesn't have hair around it, has sensible haircuts, sensible framework given to them. They'll invest. All these sectors we are having conversations around, and I'm sure you'll see outcomes on all sectors this year, positive outcomes.
So what are the impediments currently to foreign capital coming into stressed assets, and do you think the rules need to be changed in any way?
So I think the impediments are basically clarity of framework, and we touched upon it earlier. Whatever the way of doing it is, what the foreign buyer wants to see is clarity. So if we are able to put through some successful examples through the insolvency and bankruptcy code, I think people will get more comfortable and capital will come in. But we need to show some 3-4 big examples, medium to big examples working out through this, showing India serious about timelines, about haircuts, and then foreign capital will come.
Okay, but the other big talking point has been the large buybacks from IT companies. TCS has started it, and we could hear from Infosys and Wipro soon. In that space, do you think these companies are running out of options to use the cash in terms of global M&A action?
So look, I think I'm bullish on IT services. I mean, A, just where the dollar is and is likely to remain. And B, I think what's happening is that they need to reposition themselves. What's happening in the world in this sector is that you need to be a lot more nimble. These companies need to be a lot more nimble, steer their ship differently. The whole digital piece, cloud, etc., artificial intelligence. These companies need to get there. And in the past, they've shown you, they've reinvented themselves each time there has been a requirement to do that. And I think whether it's the TCS, the Wipros, the Infosys, the Mindtrees, they're all doing that. And there may be short-term pain given what's happening in the US, etc., but long-term, I'm very positive on these companies. I think they'll come out as winners.
Okay, one last stressed question, and very soon we are going to have the Steel Secretary also join us. Manisha, it's very clear that banks are not able to take haircuts, especially this scepter of arrests of some bankers is clearly impeding their willingness to take haircuts. Do you see bankers crossing that hump?
I think that's really what, Lata, is going back to your previous question, is really what we need to do. We need to provide comfort to the banks. We need to make them more independent. And, things like the arrest that happened always, create a sense of insecurity. So I think some of these issues need to be dealt with rather than, worrying about what is the right structure to take this forward. Just empower the banks, let them make the decisions, support them. Don't let there be limited political interference, and I think we'll have the right outcomes.
All right, Manisha, out of time, but we have so many more questions.